Okay, so now we're in the second part of that week one lecture on positive change, facilitating positive change. So let's look back to our case examples, sort of pull some of this stuff together. So Joe, let's start with him. So we had, last time we left it, we had the student OT, one of our first patients going in, working with Joe. He says he wants to change. He says he wants to get better. Um, you need to keep in mind as this, with home health, you don't get to see somebody every day. So she saw Joe, I can't remember, maybe once a week, possibly twice a week, probably just once a week. So she wasn't there most of the time. Most of the time, Joe was still on his own in his apartment, with the lack of willpower and all that, the bad habits, the bad routines, and they kind of were too powerful. They were too much. She did not get too far. She had a lot of ideas. Joe seemed enthusiastic. She said he always loved it when she came, and they talked a lot, and he loved to socialize and all that. But that's about as far as it got. He would not carry over anything she suggested she wanted him to do. And besides just the immediate environmental change in terms of the grab bars and the benches that she put in there, she couldn't get any lasting change to happen. He didn't change his habits. So that was kind of it. She had to discharge. They only give you so long in Medicare, and you have to discharge. If you can't show progress, you can't kind of move them along through those stages of changes. It just didn't happen with him. But things kind of evolved with Joe. We kind of continued his downward spiral, and he ended up going in and out of the hospital, falling, complications with his diabetes, pretty much everything. And at one point, he was hospitalized with some severe issues around skin breakdown and pressure sores, pressure ulcers. And lo and behold, another one of our students started seeing him. This was at St. Joe's Hospital as an inpatient patient. And here things started to change for Joe. Things that he could not do by himself in his apartment, he was able to do with the structure and the help of the hospital setting. So what was the benefit of the hospital setting? For him, the routine of the hospital, the structure of the hospital, really he seemed to thrive in it. He had those regular healthy meals, so he's losing weight dramatically quite quickly. Got regular doses of insulin. It was monitored quite closely, so his blood sugar levels weren't all over the place. So he had good control of his diabetes. He had regular OT, and they worked on getting him independent with the bathing, dressing, showering, toileting. She instructed him how to use a lot of different devices, different strategies, forced Joe to do it on his own and do more and more for himself. The PT worked on strengthening, exercises, mobility, got him up and walking. And the student OT working with him in the hospital, and again, he was her patient just like it was for the student in the home, which is where you get at a certain point, level 2, they become your patients for the most part. She found that he had two big rewards that she played off, knowing that as well, how she could get him to do what she wanted him to do, get him healthier. He loved to socialize, as we talked about, loved people, loved talking with people, and he loved positive reinforcement. She found that if he told him after he did something, like got his socks on by himself for the first time, she praised that to the heights. He loved it, and he thrived on that, and he kind of went on these goals that made everybody give him this positive reinforcement. So he had the rewards, he had the routine, he had the habits. All of this was coming together, the structure, the supports, social supports, and he got better. He lost weight dramatically. His A1C levels, which is a barometer of how well your diabetes is controlled, got much, much better. He got so he could dress himself, he could bathe himself, he could toilet himself, he could make a meal in the kitchen where they practice that sort of thing. He was totally independent. He was ready to go home. He looked great, and it was a great success story in the hospital setting, using all this stuff that we just kind of talked about. Some other examples were from the readings you did on spinal cord injury interviews. Two of the patients, these are real people that did these interviews with, were Helen. She was like 57 at the time of the interview, In Alma, she was like 37, I think. And I think they were very contrasting in terms of how they dealt with their spinal cord injury, and didn't deal with a spinal cord injury, and the results they got in terms around habits and health and that sort of thing. First thing to kind of realize with the spinal cord injuries, you haven't had much with them. You had that story, and we talked somewhat about that in the fall. But a lot of the work with the spinal cord injuries, patients with a spinal cord injury, so when I say spinal cord injury, they've been paralyzed, usually from like a car accident or some kind of accident. A lot of the work ends up being on their shoes once they leave rehab, once they leave the hospital and they go home. What do I mean by that? They really need to take care of themselves, because if they don't, they're going to end up back in the hospital. Individuals with a spinal cord injury, their life expectancy is shorter than the average person. And usually the reason for that is complications from the spinal cord injury. What kind of complications? Their skin. We talked about their skin breakdown. Skin breakdown could be, it seems like just a little thing when you think about, well, skin breakdown, I mean, they get sore, so what? It can be a life or death kind of issue. They get pressure ulcers, if you haven't seen or aren't aware of those. Nasty, nasty wounds. They can kind of burrow into the flesh, get so that you can't heal them. It just gets out of control. Pneumonia, they're debilitated, they're laying flat or whatever so long. Aspirational pneumonia, aspirating, choking to death, that sort of thing. These are the kinds of things that lead to premature death with spinal cord injuries. So they have to really keep on top of things. They have to inspect their skin. They have to keep moving constantly. Ideally, every couple hours or so, or get devices that will do this for them to not put too much pressure on certain parts of their body, constantly inspecting their skin. If there's any issues, they have to get right on top of it with the doctor, with the nurse, that sort of thing. It's a lot to keep up with, to manage these kinds of diseases. So the kind of the gist of the study that you did was like, who's good at managing their spinal cord injury and really extending their lives, and who is not? And the reasons, the differences for that came down to what we're talking about. Habits, behaviors, those who have the good habits and routines, those who don't. And the consequences, depending on the habits and routines. The power of the positive habits versus not so positive habits. Helen did not have such good habits, especially when her injury first happened. She was kind of in a bad way. A lot of stuff going on in her life. She had kids at that point, substance abuse galore, gunshot wound. That's what did it for her. And things just spiraled from there. She had mental breakdowns, lost her children. They were lost custody of her children. Got probably about as low as you possibly can get as a human being. At that point, she was not doing regular positioning, passive range of motion. Talked about that. It's huge for spinal cord injuries. Keeps their legs from getting stuck and stiff and contracted. Keeps the blood flowing. Needs to be done regularly. Skin checks. And it can be challenging to check out the backside of your skin. They need mirrors. It's a process they have to keep constantly doing. And because she was not checking and doing that, she was more into substance abuse and all these other things. She kept getting pressure ulcers, kept getting hospitalized. It was really compromising her health. Eventually, she gets to the point where she gets this awareness of how serious these things are, and she starts to deal with all the tragedy in her life, and she changes her ways. She changes her habits, and it results in better health kind of stuff. And then contrasted with her was Alma. She was 37 at the time of the interview, I believe. She had an injury off a balance beam at the age of 5. I can imagine that. At the age of 5, she fell off a balance beam and injured her spinal cord. Gymnastics and cheerleading, just a little side kind of thing. Very, very dangerous sports. All kinds of horrific injuries around that. Not to say that they aren't good things and great things, but they're very dangerous sports. You have to be really careful with those. So anyway, she kind of incorporated these habits, these good habits, right from the beginning. I'm sure it started with her parents. She probably had a good support system, all that, unlike what Helen had growing up, unlike the trauma that Helen had growing up. And she just got these good habits and just stuck with it. She getting out of the chair, just what she does every few hours, and lies down. It gives her skin a break. She does the passive information constantly, the skin inspections, looking for those signs of redness. And she's very, very active. she can stay healthy. As she's active, being active keeps her healthy. It's kind of a cyclical kind of thing, staying healthy, staying active, does all these great activities, all these great occupations, limited to no history of breakdowns, pressure ulcers, hospitalizations. She's going to live a longer, extended life, you would think, than a lot of the other folks that were interviewed because of their problems with poor habits and poor routines. The bottom line with all that is just great examples of the kind of things you're going to be dealing with in the clinic around the power of habits and routines and the need to help your patients out with that. Okay, so now we're going to shift. Here's the study questions. Let me know if you have questions about those. We're going to shift to the therapeutic self-assessment, trying to do lasting change on yourself. I'm going to go through the process here. I'm going to switch to a different form here and kind of walk you through it if I can pull this up. Okay, so here's the therapeutic self-assessment. This is all posted on Canvas, and this is the overview. And this, the big key with this is what all this is about for the most part, is this first therapeutic self-assessment, the self-evaluation. That's the hard one. The other two are really a piece of cake once you get the first one down. Most of this discussion here and this stuff here is about getting your self-evaluation, just due in a few weeks. There's different steps to it. First thing you need to do is decide 2 things that you want to change about yourself. Keep it simple, keep it low ambition, but you can really choose anything. I'll give you a list of suggested things that are easier to do, but choose 2 things. And then you have to determine measures, how you're going to measure progress with those changes. Remember how we measure progress in manual muscle testing with the strength grades? So let's say somebody's 3 out of 5 with shoulder flexion when you initially see them, and then they get stronger, they go to a 4 out of 5, 5 out of 5. We're going to do different assessment tools to get a baseline measure on whatever it is you want to do. So let's say it's diet, you'd have to do what you're eating right now. What is it about your diet you want to change? Maybe you want to get more healthy in your diet, less calories, whatever it was, to find a tool to measure where you're at and then show your progress. Step 3, what is the cause behind your issues? In step 1, try to determine your cause. Just hang on just for a second, I'll be right back. Okay, sorry about that, just distracting laundry noise. Step 3, what is the cause behind, what do you think is causing it? So again, keep this simple. Can't get to the gym all the time as much as you want. That's what you want to change. Maybe the cause is you're just too busy with school, too much going on. The diet thing, maybe it is you don't have the time to really grocery shop and get good foods. You're not doing a good plan for the week, that sort of thing. And the cause will drive your interventions. So you know what's causing the problem, then you can address the problem. So if you're not getting to the gym a lot because you're too busy, what are you going to do to make it work within your existing schedule? You're going to do it first thing in the morning or whatever. Or maybe it's because you don't have anybody to do it with. Maybe you're going to find somebody to go for a walk with or whatever it is because you can't go to the gym now because of COVID or whatever. And then step 4, you're writing your goals. These are like post form goals. Each problem will have to have all goals have a corresponding baseline, that sort of thing. And then you're reassessing it. That's when the next 2, I wouldn't even think about those, but the progress note and the discharge note, we'll talk about those later. What do things do? The first one, the big one, is due week 5, 222. I'm not sure that's week 5 or not. That's week 4, actually. So you've got like 1, 2, 3 weeks. Today is February 1st. You've got 3 weeks to get this one done because you've given plenty enough time. Communicate a lot. Email, I can walk you through it if you need the help. And then the progress notes, 329 and 426. Not sure that's right or not. Here's the step-by-step. Again, think of 2 issues. Here's a list you can choose from. Most people choose nutrition, stress, fitness, time. Once in a while you get spirituality, alcohol, if it's a serious problem, you need some help with that, smoking, other things. But I really think these basic ones: stress, nutrition, physical fitness, time, those are good ones. Okay, step 2, finding your baseline measures, right? Your starting point. You're going to have to do kind of an evaluation of yourself to see what your starting point is with your problems, whatever the problems may be. And this is where you go to these worksheets. This is the link here. You did download these worksheets. They're all free online. A lot of great assessments with them. You need to find something to assess your thing, whatever it is. And there's assessments in here, I think, for time management, spirituality, smoking, I think, physical fitness, nutrition, stress. You can find one in there. You have to kind of find one on your own. What you need to do for sure, everybody needs to do with these worksheets, is 1 through 6, just the contract only, and 5, 10 through 13, 16, parts 1 and 2 only, and 17. Sleepy audio. Everybody needs to do those. You need to do those hard copies, print those off, and just submit them as hard copies when it's due on the 22nd. On worksheet number 3, you need a stage of change sheet for each issue that you want to change. So it's a total of 2. So number 3, you have to do 2 versions. Number 3, you have 2 3s. Using the wellness worksheets, other sources, other objectives, you worry, blah, 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 blah. Find 2 baseline measures of every issue, of every listed issue, for a total of 4. Let's go down to the example here to see how that comes together. So when I say 4 baselines, 2 for each. And one will be observational and one will be objective. I gave the example of smoking. This is kind of the simple one. I currently smoke 5 cigarettes a day. The objective. This is where you go to your wellness worksheets. I scored 14 on the nicotine independence scale. So let's say it's diet. I currently eat 5 servings of junk food a day, or currently eat a bag of chips a day. And then maybe you're going to go find a worksheet that'll give you a score for your diet kind of thing. And that's just for the diet, and then you do 2 for the other one as well. So here I'm just doing the smoking one, but you would need 2 for stress as well. And this is an example. And use this template. People that do wellness use this template and just fill in the blanks on what there is that they're doing. 2 causes for each issue. For example, my smoking may be due to poor habits and stress. 2 interventions for each problem. So if the problems are habits and stress, I want to address the habit, the bad habit, and the stress. I will walk for 30 minutes every night after supper instead of smoking a cigarette. Goes after the habit. I will meditate daily for 5 minutes after breakfast to manage stress. Goes after the stress. So you have to connect. Speaking of connection, when you're writing your goals, they have to be based on your baselines. So your goal, if your baseline for smoking is 5 cigarettes a day, your goal is going to be to smoke 1 cigarette a day or no cigarettes a day. If you scored 14 on this scale, you want to score and saying high, lower is better. I'll score just 6 on the scale by the end of the semester. Smoking is the occupation you're trying to change. Use this. This will really walk you through it as much as anything. I could bog down in all these details here, but use that. I think that'll help you. This will break down the interventions, what you need, all the different parts, the what, when, and how long. And writing your goals, make them into coast form. And again, don't worry about these other parts. We'll talk more about those later. Keep using this template. This is the key to make your life a lot less miserable. There's the rubric. Key thing with this is communication, like I just said. keep communicating on your ideas, how you're going to measure them, and that sort of thing, how you're going to break them down. It can be challenging. Some people take to this very easily, quickly. Some people not so much. Here